All right, we should be recording.
Okay, well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm Richard Massey with Civil Plus Structural Engineer Magazine, and I'm here with Rick Holliday, who's the CEO of Factory OS, and I'm also here with Joe Speicher with the Autodesk Foundation. So I feel like I'm in pretty good company, and Emily, you're here with us as well.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Rick, so you're driving down the road, huh?
I'm driving actually up a hill towards Lake Tahoe from the Bay Area. About three hours north of San Francisco is a big old lake. It's a nice place to go for the weekend. So I'm headed away for a few days.
Well, I bet someone like you in the market that you work in, doing the work that you do, I bet you need a little break.
Every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is a great news release that you guys put out.
Yeah.
And what I like about it as an editor, it's an engineering story, it's a construction story, but there's also a big social element to this with the housing, the creating affordable housing. It's a huge issue. And so, Rick, with this infusion of technology and I would assume cash for your company, how is this going to affect you?
Well, I'll take one step back before I get into answering that. My main interest in doing the company was a byproduct of 40 years I've spent in and around affordable housing. It's where my career started, and I served on a board of a big company that does a lot of affordable housing construction up until about a year ago or so, about 2 years ago, I guess. And what was happening in the Bay Area is the cost of constructing a unit, particularly in a place as high like San Francisco, went to levels that I'm going to quote a number probably will not believe, but it's true. The last unit that this nonprofit built in San Francisco that was completed about 6 months ago cost $850,000 hard cost per unit for one family to move in. And that number 6 or 7 years ago was maybe 400,000. It's doubled in the last 6-7 years, and it doesn't seem to be going down because our labor force is shrinking and the market's overheated and there's a lot of layers of interest. So the factory is a company that will build the project, 70% of the project in Vallejo, which is about 45 minutes from San Francisco, build it more like an automobile in a more structured fashion, and we'll cut those costs by at least 25% today. Where the technology comes in is when we look at doing that process, let's say in today's work, which would be modular 1.0, we can get 25% savings. If we start taking the tools that Autodesk has, which would take Revit and allow the modeling of projects to marry with some of their software that's like BIM 360 or Manufacton. These are programs that make it easier to track manufacturing things. If we marry their programs and create a program for just our factory, we believe we can cut the cost in half and really have big savings. So simply put, $500 million of bonding capacity, and we'll get twice as many units as it would today if we didn't do anything. And that's the main enthusiasm I think I have and Autodesk does. We've got to make the limited dollars go further.
Right. Well, how long, how did this partnership come about, Rick?
I think I'm going to throw that to Joe if he's okay, because I think, Joe, you guys found us and started about a year ago and started giving us access to some of your software and just some strategic sort of help, right?
Yeah. So I oversee a couple of programs at Autodesk, including our software donation. And we originally donated to nonprofits. Anybody that's using our software that's a tax exempt organization globally. And a couple of years ago, we said, you know what, we need to start investing in startup companies, new companies that are actually helping society, because there's a real opportunity for scale there. And so Factory OS was one of those early organizations that we started working with. We said, can we get you software and support around this software? Because we fundamentally believe that we want to stack the deck in favor of companies like Rick's that are having societal impact. And so I believe, Rick, I think we came together maybe about 18 months ago, because that meeting where Larry told our BIM team where they can see BIM was very memorable. And we've since gone from there.
Correct. Yeah, it was. Yes.
Well, let me ask you a question. So that's a neat. So you found this company that kind of embodied the values that you wanted to support. And so, Rick, how did this infusion of technology and software? How is that a game changer for Factory OS?
There's a few things that we've already started to get the benefit of. When we build basically a module or the portion of the house, we're building a fully formed room, which probably you maybe have been able to see from some of the videos. And every one of those rooms now has a QR code on it that Manufacton has helped us create. And then we have a tracking system for where it is in the factory, and we have digital photographs that are getting taken of it as it goes through, so that our lenders that are looking at putting loans on for our projects are really enthusiastic, because at the end of the job, we're able to produce a digital set of working drawings that are actually real photographs rather than working drawings. And they're more accurate because you can see inside every wall of every unit in a post-construction digital file. And in addition to that, we are able to take a program like Revit and start to take the benefits of modeling the project that we're about to build and have it create our manufacturing drawings faster. And then we have a link between the A&E portion of our factory, which is about 7 or 8 people, actually to each station with a TV screen. So if someone's at a station and they're scratching their head trying to figure out what they need to do, they can actually communicate back to the A&E office. And then, of course, if they need to actually talk to them, they can walk 100 yards or so and have a conversation. So all of the screw-ups of RFIs and change orders get distilled down to a much more rational process. And by taking Autodesk software and marrying it with the people on the stations, we're just starting to get the beginning benefits of all that.
So and that's a great answer. So you're getting tangible benefit from what the Autodesk Foundation has done for you.
Right now, like I say, lenders are somewhat wary of anything that's new for obvious reasons, because they have a conservative streak in them.
Right.
What's happening is they come out and look at the factory and they go, wow, we have cameras and factory webcams. They can see their order moving through the factory. So when they're funding the loan draws, they actually have a greater sense of control over their construction loan than if they go and do job site walks every month and try to guess the level of completion.
Okay, and Joe, I think you wanted to get in there.
Just a quick point of clarification. So I lead our philanthropic work, as well as a number of other programs within the company. all of this that we're talking about here is run through Autodesk Corporate, Autodesk Inc. So our philanthropy is actually a separate legal entity. I work for the company, and myself and my team manage the philanthropy on behalf of the company. But the software licensing, the support around that, and the investment is actually from Autodesk Inc., which is, I think, one of the more interesting aspects of this, because honestly, companies have a philanthropy that does the good charitable work while the company goes off and makes money, right? You're starting to see kind of the blurred lines there where, like Rick said, solving a societal problem like affordability of housing is also can create business value at the same time.
Right. Yeah, well, it's interesting because we are in a new age where, I'm kind of an old man now, and I can remember where a business was a business and that was it. You spent your money there or you didn't. But now there's a big social component to a lot of these bigger companies, and you see it, all over the place. And, like companies making a stand on something that they believe in, and the consumers, supporting that. And it seems like there's some of that going on. To me, what makes this fascinating is this is coming out of San Francisco, where the affordability housing crunch is extreme. And so, Rick, talk about that a little bit, because, I've read the stories and talked to the people, and so tell us about that aspect. Like, how urgent is this situation?
Well, to build on the point is that we all understand Ben and Jerry's as a concept, and like 30 years ago, those folks really developed the notion of making ice cream for money and trying to make social good. I think that a lot of companies have seen that model with millennials populating their workforce that want that to be part of their culture. And both of my daughters fit that profile perfectly because they're in their 30s. And so the most tangible byproduct of that is this thing I was describing earlier with Manufacton. This interesting company that's Autodesk has helped support is writing software for manufacturing companies to be more efficient. So they lend us a guy named Jordan Easterling, who's in his early 30s. And we love Jordan, and we think, God, we'd love to have Jordan work here, but we sort of wince when we think we can't steal an employee from somebody who's been generous enough to loan them to us.
Right.
But Jordan volunteered that he really wanted to work at Factory OS, even if it meant he might not get as much money if he stayed at Manufacton and they went public. So we gingerly asked Manufacton and Autodesk, hey, is it all right if we sort of offer him a job? And they said, absolutely. And Jordan has come into our company, and he's been recruiting other younger people that fit his profile, and he's starting to build out our A&E group that's going to become the nucleus of our work with Autodesk and Manufacton. So younger people want to work in companies, I believe, that they feel they're paid well, but as important that it's doing something of value. And that's a new dynamic that I think speaks to a new generation of worker.
Yeah, and Joe, I'd like to hear your take on that whole evolution.
I kind of look at it in two ways. One of which is exactly what Rick said. Like, I think it's interesting. I think it's a function of, and I don't want to get too wonky historical here, but businesses up until the 80s, were considered themselves responsible for their stakeholders writ large. Yeah. And that included not only their shareholders, but also their customers, their employees, and the communities in which they worked. And I think the last 4 decades, we've gotten away from that a little bit. We've kind of, the role of shareholder primacy has taken over all of the other stakeholders that companies used to focus on. And I think that what Rick's mentioning is it's a return to this like wider focus of, adding business value, but also thinking about the context in which you work and ensuring that you're adding value to those other stakeholders as well. I also think, and this kind of gets back to your original question, and this is a little bit more Machiavellian in response, but the problems that we are facing as a society are getting to be so costly that it's actually becoming profitable to solve for those problems.
Yeah.
So you ask about, how is this impacting San Francisco and the affordability crisis? I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. It's outrageous how expensive it is to build buildings. And so Rick and his team come along with a brilliant solution, and we say, God, we've got to do this. This is wonderful. I think you'll see the same in climate change as well. I use this example ad nauseum, but Tesla, which has a big factory in the Bay Area, is not only adding significant shareholder value, but they are facilitating the transition to an electrified automotive fleet, right? And that's solving a societal problem. And so I think that it's both the, getting back to kind of a more holistic view of what business can and should do for society, as well as solving some of these problems because they're getting so damn costly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a great perspective. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Yeah, there's great business in solving these problems. That's they are immense problems. And so, and Rick, let's jump back to you. You've been around for 40 years, but it seems like you're going into this whole new, not a new thing, you've always done affordable housing, but that there's this new era upon you, and it seems like you're just going with it, and how's it been how's it been for you to kind of navigate this new thing when you're kind of the old dog on the block?
Right.
He's a young looking man, I should say.
What's
Sorry,
that?
Rick, go for it.
It's all right. No, it's sort of ironic. I'm running up the hill to see my grandson, take him to swimming lessons this afternoon. And my wife, some people know, named the company Factory OS, which was for off-site construction, and then operating system and open source, which is a lot of what we're talking about. But the night that we had the conversation about the name of the company, she said, and I got one more OS for you. It's, oh shit, you're starting a new business at 63. And she's been a great partner, but I had no idea. If you'd asked me 3 years ago, I'd be on the phone talking about building a manufacturing business in Vallejo that has this scale to it. With that said, I can only explain that I've probably had more fun the last 2 to 3 years building this, because I'm able to draw on a lot of relationships that I've developed over the years, and then I've met a lot of new people like Joe and a lot of the people at Autodesk, and Andrew, who's the CEO, and realized that there's building some new partnerships and relationships that's going to solve a big problem. So rather than leave the industry comfortably hanging out Lake Tahoe with my grandson, I'd like to be part of changing its course, and that's very fulfilling.
Yeah, it's reading your short bio was impressive, because it's like he's taking on a whole new thing, late in the game, and I have a lot of respect for that, and so going back to your press release, with Citi's involvement in this. So talk about Citi's involvement in your program, either Joe or Rick.
I think Rick's best place to talk about that.
Okay, I'll take it. Great. Citibank is probably the biggest provider of capital for affordable housing, and so I've had relationships with them for many years, and through that they developed an interest in what we're doing, because they would see the cost of the housing they were financing skyrocketing up, and so they said, we have we do more than make construction loans. We have a venture group, and we'd like to invest. And so they started to pursue an investment, and at the same time that Autodesk did. And so to some degree, they shared some underwriting of the company, because they had to come in and do a lot of due diligence on it. But when they look at the reason they did it, at least in my perception, is they did it to make money, as Autodesk will, but they believe we've got to get the cost of affordable housing going down so that their financing leads to more units for the same reasons we're talking about. And so they, I think for basic business reasons and sort of double bottom line thinking, we're interested in making an investment. So having the biggest bank that banks affordable housing and the strongest software company in the world as our partners at the same time is unbelievably exciting for a new business that's only 2 years old.
Yeah, it's amazing. Again, I was telling Emily, that's why I'm on the phone. I saw these big names. It's like, this is a great story.
Right.
And
it is. Yeah.
And so, Joe, what's the scale here? I mean, how big can this thing get? How many houses is Rick going to be able to build?
I think Rick could probably answer that better. Rick, you can.
Go ahead, Joe. You just shoot for the moon, man, or Mars. You tell them where we're headed.
Well, here's what, Rick. You can append this comment, but Richard, I think about this in two ways. One is Factory OS is creating the infrastructure to be able to do this. And I'll say one thing on the side.
Right.
Autodesk serves three primary markets. So one is the architecture, engineering, and construction space that we're talking about today. We also serve the product design and manufacturing space. This is the convergence of those two. You're literally taking the construction worker on the job site and putting him in on a manufacturing shop floor. He's just manufacturing housing, right? And so we think that we have a unique value add in that, given our experience in the product design and manufacturing space. But back to your question. I think Rick and the team are setting up the infrastructure to be able to replicate and scale this incredibly quickly. So from the perspective of like how many houses are they going to build, I am certain that this company is going to be wildly successful in whatever it is they want to do, because they've got the right team, and we're thrilled to be along the ride with them. The thing that I'll say is that if when they prove out the unit economics, that we really can design and build a unit of housing for 20 to 25% less, or even greater, that could have transformative effects on the industry overall. And that's a really exciting opportunity. And Rick mentioned it. And when you asked why he's sticking around when he could be sitting lakeside and enjoying his grandkids, it's the opportunity to transform an industry and make significant changes to how things are done. And that is what really gets me excited. So my twofold response is, Rick and team are going to knock it out of the park, and we are grateful to be along that ride. And they're also going to change how we construct housing in highly urban, dense cities and metropolitan areas. And we're excited about that opportunity as well.
Great. Well, Rick, you want to piggytail on that?
Yeah, well, I think that, our initial goal is to make Mare Island the absolute world center for innovation in industrialized construction. And it sounds audacious, but when you realize we're the world center for A&E with Autodesk and a lot of other, Google was our first customer, which we don't need to necessarily go into. We're going to be the world center in Vallejo because we're training workers differently. We're going to be, I think, the beacon that leads people. And I think just by virtue of how many visits we get from people that want to learn what we're doing, I can say that with confidence. Our partnership with Autodesk is going to involve us levering up and getting a second building on the island and really looking at using automation and standardization of a floor plan to build housing for disaster victims or homeless housing at real scale and that no one's ever seen before. And so one of our first efforts is to take a building that we have an option on and put a plan on it so we have a companion factory that's highly automated that can inform our mother factory that will keep pushing the abilities there. In addition to that, we're also starting to look at a second facility in Los Angeles, which is a natural. And I think that those are the short-term objectives. Personally, I think if Factory OS is a California-based company and focuses on that, that's what we should do. We may have certain licensing capacities to help other factories get started very quickly in other markets, but I'm not sure we'll be a company that has 20 or 30 factories around. I think that we're going to have our hardware sort of centered in California and a licensing kind of arrangement with people that want to lever off our knowledge in the next few years to grow the company beyond that.
Okay. Right. Well, you sound, both of you guys sound very confident about what's going on. This is really cool. So what else? I mean, I wanted to just call and talk to you guys for about 30, 40 minutes and getting up to that time. But anything else you'd like to add?
I'll add two final thoughts. One is it relates to the comment I made about the convergence of construction and manufacturing. But we from our view, we've got customers like major automotive customers that are able to manufacture millions of the same product with very little error. And then we look at the construction space where Rick mentioned one of the big challenges they're working on is like change orders. If you're Ford and you've got change orders regularly coming off the plant floor, you've got a big problem. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity in the convergence of the space, and that's one of the main reasons why we're excited about this is Rick's actually driving that convergence. My second point, last point that I'll make is that one of the things that we're very excited about is within the deal docs, and this actually goes to the philosophical alignment between the two organizations, we've actually built some impact metrics into the deal, looking at waste reduction as it relates to carbon emissions, looking at affordability of housing, and looking at how Rick and the team have put kind of human capital and their workers first. And that to me is pretty revolutionary and pretty exciting about the deal. There's not a lot of that out there, particularly from the philanthropic side. It's really game changing. And so I'm pretty excited about that as well. So those are my parting thoughts.
Great. Well, yeah.
I'll add one myself because I think Joe started to touch on it because we got a $50,000 award from a nice foundation, national award, 150 applicants. And on the 1-year anniversary of starting production in late April, we got this award. And of our 190 workers, half of them weren't even in construction a year ago. And we have some wonderful anecdotal employees, like a young woman that was a waitress for 15 years at 32, got recruited by the carpenters to come in. She's making twice what she made with health benefits in the future. And she's very competent at pulling wire and working the MEP portion. And when we look at our workers, they're making 50 to 60 grand, which is a good solid salary, but in the Bay Area, it's really not as much as you really need to house yourself well. And so we have decided with the City of Vallejo, we've got a piece of property and we're going to start work on a project for our own employees.
Huh.
And
We'll
do the whole Henry Ford thing. It's very exciting. And it just is something that popped up as a result of this award. We decided we'll take the 50 grand, hire an architect, create a little team of students, and we're going to have a little plan for it in the next 60 days that'll be public. But closing that loop and taking care of the workers, which Joe said, is a really, really important part of why I'm doing this? Because construction workers are treated like mercenaries. They basically drive long distances to jobs for 3 months, don't ever develop any real friendships or depths of camaraderie. They're just going and they're driving further and further. If you come to our factory, we're really building a strong bond between the workers, and we do a lot of things to build a family kind of desire, and we want the workers to feel that they're part of something special, which is we're going to change the way housing's built, and we're going to change the way they build their housing. And that's closing the loop in terms of the whole thing. And I would say stay tuned for that. In 9 months, I expect to have some very specific results there.
Great. Well, it's been great talking with you guys. I love your energy and your smarts, and the fact that you're trying to do something good for your fellow man as well as your business at the same time. That's impressive. So we'll conclude the interview, and I'm going to put this together, and hopefully we'll have a nice story to put out on the web and tell your story to thousands and thousands of people.